today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. Virginia Fuchs, unbeaten up-and-comer Virginia Fuchs, amateur standout Virginia Fuchs, posted this to her Instagram account. It reads, announcement, I'll be fighting September 10th on the Shields versus Marshall and Mayer versus Baumgartner card in the UK. This is a very special card. All women getting to showcase their skills, changing the game. I told my team, I'll take anyone from 112 to 120 pounds because I know I have the skill to take over any of those weight divisions. Can't wait to see who they give me. I'm ready for anyone. 112 to 120 pounds, that's anywhere between flyweight and super bantamweight. That is roughly 4 divisions, 4 weight classes. Virginia Fuchs made her professional debut earlier this year on the undercard of the Mayer versus Hearn fight.
And that was a flyweight contest.
Virginia kicked off a professional debut with a bang, scoring a 4th-round knockout of Randy Morales. And she says she's open to a fight anywhere between flyweight and super bantamweight. Though given that she made her professional debut as a flyweight, you kind of get the sense that that's where her next fight might be, at either flyweight or super flyweight, 115 pounds. And I got to tell you that Virginia Fuchs' debut, her professional debut, was among the best professional debuts I've seen from these amateur standouts turned pro. I rank Virginia's professional debut right up there with Carolyn Dubois and Karis Artingstall's.
Coincidentally, Virginia is a southpaw the same way that Carolyn and Karis are southpaws. It's not a coincidence.
There's something special about a spiteful southpaw, a southpaw with bad intentions that exhibits the combinations, the punching power, and the footwork, the athleticism and movement, range of motion that a Virginia Fuchs displays, that a Carolyn Dubois, a Karis Artingstall displays. These are very, very special fighters. Virginia Fuchs, she's not the youngest unbeaten up-and-comer. She's 34 going on 35 years old. She ain't got all the time in the world, at least not as much time as, say, Sky Nicholson or a Taylor Robinson. So she's got to hit the ground running. She's got to move fast in order to make a splash in the pro ranks.
And there's a lot left to the imagination as to who it is she's going to be fighting next and where.
Though as far as what she's capable of, there's not as much left to the imagination as you found out a lot about.
You found out a lot about Virginia Fuchs in her debut and what she can do, what she's capable of.
What she's got in the toolbox and what kind of skill set she possesses. When she says she's capable of dominating any one of those weight classes from 112 to 120 pounds, 122 really, I believe her.
We've just got to see where she pops up next on the undercard of Shields versus Marshall.
In other news, several divisions north of the super bantamweight division, all the way up there at junior middleweight. A very ominous message from Canada's own Mary Spencer on the heels of her big knockout win over former IBF champion Chris Namis. I think a rematch with Natasha Jonas, this division's reigning WBO champion, would be much like the first one. I think I would stop her and send her back to the lightweight division where she belongs.
We've known for some time now that Natasha Jonas, in spite of being a newly crowned WBO junior middleweight champion,
she's not a true junior middleweight. She has campaigned as low as 130 pounds. In fact, very early in her career, she was stopped there by Brazil's own murderess, Viviane Obanoff, who got through with a couple of hard shots, and Natasha didn't wear them well. She got stopped. And granted that Natasha Jonas has rebounded since then, what you have to wonder is, if you can get stopped at 130 pounds, what happens to you if someone as educated and statuesque, as physically imposing and capable as a Mary Spencer, what happens if she lands on you the way that Viviane Obanoff landed on you?
This news comes to us by way of Women's Fight News magazine.
And this is where procuring an alphabet title can become dangerous, because the more alphabet titles you collect, the more targets you paint on your back. Natasha Jonas, being a champion at this weight, true junior middleweight or not, she's a target. And she's got history with Mary Spencer.
She stopped Natasha Jonas 15 years ago, way back when in 2007.
In what was a welterweight contest. Both Natasha Jonas and Mary Spencer, they're actually in the same age range. They're late 30s. And they were much younger women then. They fought in a welterweight contest where Mary Spencer stopped Natasha Jonas in just 2 rounds. And being honest with you, in spite of
Natasha being further along in her professional career than Mary,
same kind of amateur background, you understand, though as professionals, Natasha is a lot more experienced than Mary. I think a fight with Mary at junior middleweight in the pro ranks it would go the same way their amateur meeting went. I think Mary would stop Natasha. This is where campaigning as a junior middleweight becomes dangerous for a fighter that isn't really a true junior middleweight. We know that Natasha is in the process of attempting to procure a unification match with this division's reigning WBA champion, Hannah Rankin. And I give Natasha good odds to win that fight with Hannah, at least better odds than I'd give her to beat Mary Spencer. Being honest with you, based on what I've seen from Mary, she stands a good chance of stopping both Natasha and Hannah Rankin. She's that good, that physically imposing, and that educated a puncher.
One thing that Natasha has working for her is that because she's a naturally smaller fighter than most other junior middleweights, she's quick.
She would go into a fight with most other junior middleweights with a noticeable speed advantage, but she really wouldn't have that advantage over Mary Spencer, who, in spite of being a noticeably statuesque fighter, she's got a lot of speed in those hands, snap in those shots, and quickness in those legs. Yes, she's in her late 30s, but she seems to have taken very good care of herself, as she has explosivity. The kind of explosivity that you don't often see in a fighter this age.
She's a damn good boxer. She can fight mid-range to inside or mid-range to outside.
She's got the height and the length to do both, and do both fluidly. I think that Natasha Jonas would be under grave threat of being stopped if she found herself opposite the ring, Mary Spencer, and perhaps the saving grace is that she's in the process of negotiating another fight with a champion, someone who's really not as risky as Mary is.
This isn't a slight at Natasha Jonas. I love Natasha Jonas.
And I can think of at least 2, 3, maybe even 4 very winnable fights for Natasha at junior middleweight, but this isn't one of them.
They better steer clear of Mary Spencer.
I have a high opinion of Natasha Jonas, but I think opposite the ring Mary Spencer, she'd be biting off more than she could chew. Mary Spencer right now is a high-risk, low-reward opponent.
Natasha ought to unify what title she can unify and get the fuck out of Dodge.
Because an extended stay in today's junior middleweight division becomes more and more dangerous as more time passes, as more time progresses, and Mary Spencer inches closer to challenging a champion. In other news, heavyweight contender Michael Hunter took to social media and stated, "Al Heyman won't give me Wilder. We were at the Olympics together. He won't mention me, though. He knows he is Lil Brother," respectfully, referencing something that must have happened in both Michael Hunter and Deontay Wilder's amateur days, though I don't know how relevant that is here today. As Michael Hunter, capable boxer that he might be, he hasn't quite made the splash that Deontay Wilder has made, and he hasn't looked great as of late. He looked pretty bang average against Jerry Forrest. He seemed like a fighter that was regressing, though Michael Hunter added, "For the first time, a promoter has an actual plan for me. Scalp Huey in September, Daniel Dubois for that belt right after, and then Joseph Parquier, cause the man is up for it."
Last couple of years, Michael Hunter's been a bit of a transient.
Floating from outfit to outfit, platform to platform, place to place, seemingly looking for love in all the wrong places. He was at Matchroom for a while, had 1 or 2 fights there. Then he ended up at Triller. He ended up at Triller after rejecting an IBF Mando slot.
He was ordered by the IBF to take on Filip Hrgovic, and he decided to walk away.
He decided that fiscally, it made more sense to him, at least at that point, to jump into bed with the fledgling boxing platform, Triller.
He had 2 fights on the platform, one against Mike Wilson and a rematch with Jerry Forrest.
And he didn't look good in that rematch. Signs of regression. Regression, which can be interpreted as Michael Hunter taking the path of least resistance, and that's showing up in his overall condition and his performance, as he already fought Jerry Forrest years before, and he beat him.
He fights him years later and he languishes. Why?
It's because he's regressed. That's why, and that's what happens when you stay on the path of least resistance. That's what happens when you don't stay sharp. You make a decision that you'd rather knock off stiffs for nominal purses than perhaps risk losing to a Filip Hrgovic for an IBF Mando spot, because that's essentially what Michael Hunter did, and he has since parted ways with Triller. He's not boxing on that platform anymore. It seems that Sky has a plan for him, and the plan is to reschedule the Huey Fury fight for September.
Remember, Huey Fury got sick and he had to pull out, so now they're rescheduling the fight.
And it seems they want to schedule it for September. The winner of that fight becomes the mandatory challenger for Daniel Dubois' WBA Reggie belt, his regular title that he recently won by knocking out America's own Trevor Bryan.
And that's going to be interesting because both Huey Fury and Michael Hunter box on Sky, whereas Daniel
boxes under the Queensberry Promotions banner by way of BT Sport. And as of late, we've been hearing a lot of Boxer versus Matchroom stuff, Queensbury versus Matchroom, obviously, but this situation will pit Boxer against.
This is going to be Boxer and Sky versus Queensbury and BT.
That kind of situation. I've been telling you guys for weeks, and I've been telling you guys for months, that things are set to become very competitive in the UK market, as there are three or four preeminent promotional outfits all staging cards there. And things are going to get very interesting once you mix and match the names. The winner of this fight by way of the WBA becomes the mandatory challenger for Daniel's belt. And that could create a situation to where they've got to work out some kind of deal.
Or Daniel's got to drop it.
He's got to drop that WBA title and surrender it to the winner of this fight, as to avoid having to box on the rival platform. And given that Daniel Dubois came all the way to America as part of a Don King show, because Don King won the rights for the fight, the Dubois versus Bryan fight, it being that Daniel was actually willing to travel just to procure that version of the WBA title, would he part with it so easily?
If WBA orders him to fight the winner of Michael Hunter versus Hughie Fury, what's Daniel going to do?
Is he going to go through with the fight? Will the fight end up going to a purse bid where both Sky and Boxer and Queensbury and BT end up bidding against each other? Or will Daniel wash his hands of the entire situation and choose to chuck the belt, throw it in the air, and just stay on the BT side of things, not worrying about either Michael Hunter or Hughie Fury, whichever one of them emerges the victor? Very interesting situation that doesn't even involve Eddie Hearn.
As Eddie Hearn is at the center of the conversation most times when you're talking about the UK.
But not this time. This situation could end up pitting Queensbury against Boxer and BT against Sky for the potential rights to Daniel Dubois versus the winner of this fight, whoever that ends up being, whether it's Michael Hunter or Hughie Fury. None of these three guys have been looking all that spectacular as of late. You know, Daniel Dubois looked pretty odd, maybe somewhat uncomfortable on foreign soil against Trevor Bryan. He got the job done, and I said that he would, but he didn't look world class. Michael Hunter, who we just talked about, he looked bang average against Jerry Forrest.
And the often ill Hughie Fury, who knows which version of him is going to show up.
It is a interesting little situation in it of itself, though the people over there at Sky and Boxer, according to Michael Hunter, they have a plan for him, and that plan starts with rescheduling that Hughie Fury fight. And what that leads to...
It leads the winner to Daniel Dubois. What happens then?
And just in keeping with the theme of discord and a competitive UK market, Lawrence Okolie brutally compares promoter Eddie Hearn to a plantation owner.
It's a bit extreme, isn't it?
Well, that really all depends on what it is exactly Lawrence Okolie is talking about and what he's got to say. Earlier today, WBO World Cruiserweight Champion Lawrence Okolie posted 3 tweets in quick succession, now all deleted, but we have photo evidence, brutally comparing his promoter, Eddie Hearn, to a plantation owner. Tweet 1 by Lawrence Okolie was captioned, "Great movie. Loads of lessons in this one," with an image of the Django Unchained movie. The picture was of Calvin Kendall, a plantation owner who earns his money by forcing male slaves to participate in brutal wrestling matches called Mandingo fights for his own entertainment and profit. The second tweet by Lawrence Okolie saw him at his promoter Eddie Hearn tweeting, "To be honest, Eddie Hearn is and was not followed up by anything else, but the prior tweet just 1 minute before it makes it pretty obvious what he was comparing Eddie to. A slave master forcing his fighters to fight for his own profit." Lawrence Okolie then made a third tweet. "The problem is too often we let those in power dictate the narrative." Another dig at Hearn, implying that Hearn thinks he's in power, and media allow him to control the perception the public have. Hearn signed Lawrence Okolie straight out of the Olympic team in 2016 and took him to British, Commonwealth, European, and world titles in under 16 fights. Okolie is not particularly exciting with some of his fights, massively underwhelming fans, and is not a commercial draw, either as shown by the Cieslak fight and previous viewing figures. Despite this, Matchroom gave Okolie the opportunity to headline on Sky Sports and DAZN. They also paid up for Okolie to have his world title shot in the UK with no fans in February. They delivered a top 10 cruiserweight on a Sunday event that did not perform well and were actually actively trying to make big fights for Okolie for the second half of the year, even though they knew Okolie only had one fight left and was planning to leave.
Some people are already calling Lawrence Okolie ungrateful.
Eddie Hearn chimed in on the situation, saying, "We've done an amazing job for Lawrence Okolie. I was disappointed with what I saw. He's had an offer. We have a fight left in our agreement. We expect him to honor that." That quote comes to us by way of IFL TV.
You think that Lawrence Okolie's being ungrateful?
I think that's what the author of that article thinks, describing Lawrence Okolie as being underwhelming. In truth, that's not the first, the second, or even the third time I've heard that. A lot of people feel that way about Lawrence's style of fighting.
They think he's boring. They think he's awful to watch.
Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just relaying the message. Lawrence Okolie himself says, "I ain't gonna speak until I'm legally allowed to. Just for my friends that have been deceived lately, all will be revealed very soon." And
the truth is, you're defaming Eddie Hearn's character.
for what reason specifically, I don't presume to know, but I do know that that's what he's doing. And because he's under contract with Eddie Hearn and Matchroom, there may be a disparagement clause in play, to which you don't get to say this kind of stuff without consequences.
You don't get to run around calling every Joe Blow a slave owner just because you can't have things your way.
Is Lawrence just another fighter with an inflated sense of self and an inflated ego to where he feels he should have been pushed and promoted harder in spite of his own inadequacies, because he really doesn't have a fan-friendly style? And you can ask around. A lot of people will tell you that. Matchroom got you to a world title, and they've promoted you to a point to where another broadcaster is offering you even more money. So did they really fail you?
He seems to have an issue with Matchroom. Does he also have an issue with 258 Management?
Since the feeling is he will be leaving them as well. 258 Management, Anthony Joshua's management company. I mean, what is this? Is it that you want Anthony Joshua treatment at Matchroom? Because in order to get that, you've got to put up Anthony Joshua numbers. And Lawrence Okolie, he don't do that.
That's not a knock on him. It's a matter-of-fact statement. He's not the same box office draw that Anthony Joshua is.
We'll see what comes out in the wash.